Upon the arrival of a bunch of fraudulent HOA officers at my residence, alleging that I was in violation of community regulations, I recognized that something was amiss. Armed with counterfeit badges and some hubris, they attempted to apprehend me in my own yard. The issue? I'm the authentic town marshal. They are about to discover, via difficult experience, that they have provoked the wrong individual. I have always perceived the HOA in my community as a group of irrational individuals with excessive leisure and insufficient productive activities. A group of self-appointed enforcers who saw themselves as the judge, jury, and executioner for those who do not adhere to their arbitrary regulations. They had previously criticized me over the dimensions of my fence, the hue of my door, and even the manner in which I parked my vehicle. However, nothing, unequivocally nothing, could have equipped me for the events that transpired that morning. While enjoying my coffee in a tranquil manner, I observed a gathering of individuals standing outside through the window's reflection. 4 individuals stood on my sidewalk, all adorned in identical polo shirts and sunglasses, exuding an artificially cultivated aura of authority. One individual was grasping a notebook. Another possessed a toy radio slung around her waist, and the piece de resistance was the woman in the center, with short, dyed hair, arms crossed, and an expression reminiscent of having inhaled a liter of vinegar. Karen. She distinguished herself as the leader of the group, like to a general commanding an army of fools. I inhaled deeply, finished my coffee, and proceeded to answer the door. Before I had completely opened it, she began speaking like though delivering a press conference. You are an egregious breach of HOA regulations, and we are prepared to initiate corrective measures. I gazed at the woman, anticipating the presence of a concealed camera. Was this a jest? What does she desire at this moment? Before I could utter a word, she brandished a piece of plastic and thrust it towards my face. You are being investigated for multiple violations, including the unlawful painting of your garage and the presence of an unregistered vehicle on your property. She hesitated theatrically, as if on the verge of accusing me of homicide and misconduct towards community members. I had to suppress a laugh. The garage has maintained the same hue since my arrival. The unregistered vehicle was my entirely lawful truck, stationed in my personal lot. What is unacceptable behavior? I unequivocally declined to participate in the tedious and inconsequential HOA meetings. That is where the implausible aspect emerged. Due to your disregard for prior warnings, the HOA is invoking its right to civil custody, and we are here to detain you until the issue is handled. Confinement. I blinked several times, attempting to comprehend her words. Do you intend to apprehend me? Karen inflated her chest, as though she were poised to be awarded a medal for valor. The Homeowners Association possesses complete jurisdiction over this community. The other 3 individuals nodded in unison, resembling a choir of well-trained parrots. At that moment, I comprehended the extent of the madness. They genuinely believed they possessed the authority to apprehend an individual. They were unaware. I am a town marshal, not a mall security officer or a community volunteer. I am an authentic deputy, equipped with a badge, a firearm, and a considerable amount of patience for such absurdity. I maintain my composure and choose to engage in the game briefly. Fascinating, I remarked, pretending to contemplate. What is your specific plan for apprehending me? Karen indicated one of the assailants, a man possessing a protruding abdomen and wearing a t-shirt that appeared 2 sizes too small. He produced a pair of plastic handcuffs from his pocket. Polymer material? We own our own methodologies, he asserted, attempting to project an air of toughness. It was confirmed. The circus was established in my doorway. I inhaled deeply, retreated, and in a one-fluid motion extracted my wallet from my pocket, revealing my gleaming badge. Karen's smile vanished as swiftly than a Black Friday sale. It is reassuring to learn that you believe you possess the authority to effectuate arrests, I remarked, adopting the gravest tone possible. Currently, you are perpetrating multiple offenses, including impersonation of a law enforcement officer and attempted kidnapping. The stillness was immediate. Karen's eyes expanded in astonishment. Her henchmen exchanged glances, and for the first time, they comprehended that they had been engaging with the incorrect individual. What is the inquiry? What is your implication? The woman faltered, her confidence disintegrating like a house of cards in a tempest. I folded my arms. I am indicating that if you do not vacate my property within the next 5 seconds, I will proceed to arrest you. Quietude. Perspiration began to trickle down one of the man's foreheads. Karen's palm quivered slightly as she continued to grasp the laminated paper. Subsequently, akin to a swarm of rats abandoning a sinking vessel, they commenced retreating, uttering feeble justifications. "It is not concluded yet," Karen exclaimed, before pivoting on her heels and vanishing with her ineffectual associates. I observed them departure, experiencing a blend of amusement and incredulity. What had just transpired? However, I was acutely aware that this narrative was far from concluded. If I believed that absurd arrest scene marked the conclusion of the jest, I was gravely mistaken. I have seen obstinate individuals, although Karen and her associates elevated it to an almost artistic degree. Ordinary individuals would acquiesce to defeat and proceed with their lives, but this woman is different. She not only persevered but also opted to quadruple her wager. The initial reprisal occurred the following day. Upon exiting to dispose of the rubbish, I discovered that my bins were missing. They had merely vanished. No evidence of their presence was observed on the sidewalk or the side of the home. I observed Karen on the opposite side of the street, standing with her arms crossed, exuding an air of superiority as if she considered herself the queen of the area. Upon our gaze intersecting, she deliberately emitted a contented smile prior to entering the residence. I inhaled deeply and attempted to disregard it. Nevertheless, upon reaching my mailbox, I saw an envelope bearing the HOA insignia. I opened it, anticipating subpar content, and I was not let down. A compilation of sanctions, since they assert that I was in violation of community standards. I was prohibited from utilizing the waste disposal services, barred from parking my vehicle in the garage, and required to attend a compulsory meeting to address my misconduct. I seized the paper and bifurcated it, allowing the fragments to descend to the ground. If Karen intended to irritate me, she would need to exert more effort. Yet, she undoubtedly possessed further strategies. That afternoon, I ventured away to organize matters, and upon my return, I discovered an orange cone positioned in the center of my driveway. Adjacent to it, a plastic notice was affixed to a piece of wood, resembling an official notification. My garage was closed by directive of the HOA. It was the most ludicrous spectacle I had ever witnessed. How can an individual possess the audacity to prohibit another person's garage? I approached, removed the wrapping, and casually discarded the cone onto the sidewalk, where I noticed two of Karen's associates observing from across the street. One of them was holding a notebook recording unspecified observations, perhaps on owner removing cone improperly, as if they were earnest investigators rather than two fools posing as inspectors. Karen arrived in less than 2 minutes. That cannot be removed. I observed her gripping the cone as though it were a lethal instrument. Am I unable to? Within my residence? She indicated the laminated paper, her face already reddening with rage. This is a punishment from the Homeowners Association. One cannot simply disregard community regulations. I inhaled deeply to suppress my laughter at her expense. Karen, you lack the jurisdiction to prohibit my garage. You possess no authority other than to irritate me. She expressed her indignation with widening eyes, but before she could respond, I entered the house and forcefully closed the door. However, the narrative was not yet concluded. The following day, when I was at the police station, I received a call from one of the few neighbors not affiliated with this eccentric HOA cult. He appeared quite apprehensive. The police are stationed in front of your residence. I ceased my activities. 2 automobiles. They reported receiving a tip of someone armed with a firearm on your premises. That was the moment I comprehended. Karen had lodged an appeal. She contacted the police and fabricated a narrative to implicate me. I drove my car directly home. Upon my arrival, I observed the two cops conversing with Karen, who was adeptly assuming the role of victim. Her demeanor reflected profound concern for the community's safety. If I had not been aware of her deceitful nature, I would have been convinced otherwise. I exited the vehicle, and the police immediately identified me. I was acquainted with both of them. Upright, virtuous individuals. Their expressions indicated that they recognized the futility of their presence. "Apologies, sir," one of them remarked, somewhat uncomfortably. "A complaint has been received regarding suspicious activities involving an armed man at this residence." I gazed directly at Karen. I suppose that the report originated from this individual, correct? She attempted to conceal it by placing her hand on her chest. I merely conveyed what I overheard. Several individuals observed a dubious movement and became apprehensive. The officers exchanged looks, already exasperated. One of them exhaled deeply and directed their gaze towards me. Given the absence of a genuine threat, we will categorize it as such. However, Miss Karen, for the record, submitting false reports can lead to significant consequences. Her visage flushed crimson. It was the first occasion she appeared genuinely anxious. She attempted to voice her objections, but ultimately relented, crossing her arms in anger. The officers departed, and I remained, gazing at Karen. She gazed at me in silence. For the first time, I sensed that she truly comprehended the peril of her actions. However, I was aware that she had not relinquished her efforts. She intended to attempt something more detrimental, and I was eager to observe the extent to which this woman would proceed before she utterly self-destructed. I was previously aware that Karen was not inclined to surrender lightly, but following the police prank debacle, anyone possessing even a modicum of shame would have concealed herself and remained silent. This woman is not included. For her, defeat was unacceptable. When the attempt to apprehend me with plastic handcuffs and the fabricated accusation failed, it became evident that she had a contingency plan, which began to manifest the following morning. I was awakened by the noise of a substantial vehicle arriving directly in front of my residence. Still rather lethargic, I approached the window and observed a group of uniformed workers disembarking from the vehicle, armed with excavators, shovels, and numerous orange cones. They appeared prepared to commence significant construction activities. My initial impression was that they were at the incorrect address. However, I suddenly observed Karen on the opposite side of the street, arms crossed and wearing a smug smirk, as if she had just unraveled a loose thread and was poised to see the disintegration of my universe. I descended the stairs in my pajamas, opened the door, and approached the men. One individual, presumably the squad leader, faced me while holding a clipboard. "Good morning, sir. We will commence repairs on the subterranean pipelines." I appeared to lack comprehension. "Which repairs?" "The Residents Association notified us of a water leak on this property." I observed Karen, who feigned admiration over a tree. "Allow me to speculate." The work order was endorsed by an individual named Karen. The man perused the documents and nodded. The directive originated from Karen Thompson, the president of the HOA. Karen, that scoundrel, had my entire yard excavated for a non-existent leak. I inhaled deeply to refrain from expressing my frustration to everyone simultaneously. "Observe, my friend, there is no leakage present. Neither you nor the HOA possesses the authority to alter anything. Hence you should collect your tools and depart." The man hesitated, gazing at his colleagues, as though seeking validation. "Indeed, sir, the situation is that we are already present, and now you are departing." He began to voice his objection, but then I displayed my badge to him. The impact was instantaneous. He enlarged his eyes, gulped audibly, and faced the staff. "All right, everyone, let's conclude for the day." The workers began gathering the tools, and Karen approached me with the force of a runaway train. "This is not permissible." I elevated an eyebrow. "What should be done?" "Prevent them from unnecessarily damaging my yard. The HOA governs the neighborhood's infrastructure, and I possess the ability to apprehend you for trespassing and fraud." Her mouth expanded and closed several times, resembling a fish out of water. For the first time, She appeared truly at a loss for words. However, the woman recuperated swiftly. "You're showing disrespect towards the community. A nice neighbor does not exhibit such behavior." I advanced, softening my tone, only to witness the color fade from her face. "You are intruding inappropriately." Karen did not respond. She raised her hands in exasperation, sighed, and re-entered the home, stomping on the floor like a petulant child. However, she was certainly not going to cease her efforts at that point. The expulsion attempt. The subsequent week, I received a correspondence from the HOA indicating that my residence was subject to disciplinary evaluation due to my conduct adversely affecting the community's welfare. Essentially, it was their elaborate manner of indicating that they were attempting to remove me. Indeed, this irrational woman sought to expel me from my own residence. The letter said that I had amassed multiple significant violations and was openly challenging the authority of the HOA. Consequently, my presence was no longer welcomed, and they were initiating procedures to rescind my residency in the area. I found it amusing, resounding. The HOA lacked the authority to execute that action. They did not possess ownership of my residence. They lacked authority over the mortgage, and they could not arbitrarily choose that I could no longer reside there. However, it appeared that Karen believed they did. Compounding the situation, certain neighbors started to disdain me, evidently swayed by the defamation campaign orchestrated by this woman. In a matter of hours, I transformed into the neighborhood's foremost adversary, the troublesome one, the insurgent challenging the revered regulations of the HOA. The situation escalated to an absurd level when, during a visit to the grocery, a neighbor with whom I had no interaction approached me and remarked, in a tone reminiscent of relaying first-hand gossip, "You know, some individuals believe that you do not integrate well here. You might contemplate relocating." I feigned a smile. Certain individuals ought to be more concerned with their own life. She flushed and exited discreetly. The disciplinary hearing, characterized by its sense of shame, was arranged for a Friday evening. I attended just for the enjoyment of witnessing Karen's failure in person. The communal room was full, with neighbors seated in seats arranged somewhat to a courthouse. Karen stood at the forefront, with a stack of documents on the table, evidently prepared to publicly condemn me. She inhaled sharply and commenced speaking in the manner of a kindergarten teacher elucidating regulations to her pupils. "We are here to address the troubling conduct of the individual who declines to engage with the community." I expressed my disdain by rolling my eyes. "Eliminate the nonsense, Karen. Do you intend to exclude me from the neighborhood?" She attempted to conceal it, although the fact was evident. Given the multitude of infractions I have accrued, I inclined forward. "Which specific offenses? Fabricated abduction? Provoking law enforcement? Unauthorized development on my property?" She blushed, yet endeavored to persist. I interjected by raising my hand. "The HOA lacks the authority to expel anyone from this location. This is not a gated community, Karen. You're not the sheriff, and this meeting holds no significance." The hush was complete. Several neighbors exchanged glances, as though comprehending this for the first time. Karen opened her mouth, closed it, and then attempted to laugh, as though it were nothing. "This is preposterous. You do not conform to our community standards." I folded my arms. I believe I will persist in my sense of alienation, as I am not progressing any place. She glared at me, her face flushed with rage, yet she recognized her defeat. However, Karen was not the type to acquiesce to defeat, and I was aware she still possessed one final underhanded tactic. I witnessed Karen attempt to apprehend me, excavate my yard, falsely accuse me of crimes, and even endeavor to expel me from her community. Whenever I believed she had reached the pinnacle of insanity, she would surpass herself. Following the public humiliation she endured at the HOA meeting, I recognized that this woman would retaliate with full force. And she complied. This time, it was neither an absurd letter, a cone in my driveway, nor a fabricated report. This time, Karen resolved to engage in unscrupulous tactics. The week following the conference, I awoke to the disconcerting sound of sirens outside my residence. I observed two county enforcement vehicles stationed outside my window. On the opposite side of the street stood she, feigning observation of the situation, yet wearing her customary delighted expression. Karen contacted the police regarding me. I descended the stairs and opened the door prior to the inspector's knock. A middle-aged man, holding a notebook, regarded me with a semblance of forced professionalism and proceeded directly to the matter at hand. We have received a report regarding several structural issues in this home. A comprehensive inspection is required. I appear perplexed. Discrepancies? Affirmative. The assessment indicates that this property features unlawful construction, improper plumbing, and a potential insect infestation. I now desire to chuckle. Karen ceased engaging in activities solely to irritate me. She was attempting to persuade the authorities to officially condemn my residence. I rested against the doorframe, observing the inspector, who lodged this complaint. The man paused briefly before responding. The Homeowners Association has formally submitted the complaint. Undoubtedly, it was the Homeowners Association. Undoubtedly, Karen was the orchestrator. I indicated for them to enter as I opened the door and added, "Let us proceed. Conduct the inspection." The inspector regarded me with astonishment. He likely anticipated my objection. However, I remained composed because, in contrast to Karen, I was not engaging in any unlawful activities. My residence was entirely compliant with regulations. They dedicated nearly 2 hours to scrutinizing all aspects, measuring walls, examining pipes, evaluating cupboards, and capturing photographs. Meanwhile, Karen and some of her sycophants remained outside, anticipating confirmation of my predicament. Upon the completion of the inspection, one of the inspectors, a younger individual, approached me for a conversation. We conducted a comprehensive examination and discovered no anomalies as stated in the complaint. Your property adheres to all county requirements. I endeavored to suppress my laughter, although it was difficult. Are you suggesting that the complaint was entirely unfounded? The inspector rubbed his head, evidently uneasy with the circumstances. Indeed, theoretically, the answer is affirmative. I grinned and folded my arms. Excellent. I intend to submit an official complaint against the HOA for harassment and the improper use of public resources. Karen became anxious. She approached me assertively before the inspectors had departed. You are exaggerating. It was merely a safety protocol. I expressed my disdain by rolling my eyes. A safety protocol, is it? Unusual. The inspectors deemed my residence flawless. Hence, either you were dishonest or lacked proficiency in inspections. She clenched her jaw and regarded the inspectors as though she anticipated their defense. However, they both only shrugged, evidently lacking tolerance for this absurdity. She attempted to continue her argument. However, I was already contacting the inspection department to lodge my complaint against her. Upon recognizing the potential for a significant issue, Karen ultimately conceded. This is not concluded, she muttered before departing with forceful steps. Fortunately for her, it had concluded. In the ensuing days, Karen's predicament deteriorated worse. The grievance I lodged against the HOA was regarded with gravity, primarily due to the fact that this was not the inaugural instance of complaints regarding their coercive methods. They commenced their investigation. Consequently, additional narratives began to surface. It was shown that Karen was imposing fines on residents without cause solely to generate revenue for the association's significant events, which were essentially gatherings for her and her acquaintances. She engaged dubious contractors for upkeep in communal areas and misappropriated a portion of the funds. The final touch of excellence? She was not originally intended to assume the presidency of the HOA. The regulations stipulated that all office holders must be re-elected annually. Nevertheless, she consistently failed to arrange the vote. She retained her authority due to a lack of willingness among others to challenge her. Up to this point, a special meeting was convened to determine the destiny of the HOA. Karen was present, attempting to justify herself. However, the situation had already escalated beyond control. The majority of the citizens were incensed at having been misled. The individuals who had previously followed her were now evidently departing, recognizing that they had been exploited. The decisive action occurred when a county auditor was summoned to examine the HOA's financial records. The individual disclosed that over $30,000 was unaccounted for. That was sufficient to permanently incapacitate Karen. The HOA board unanimously resolved to terminate her from office immediately. She continued to assert her position, threatening legal action against all parties. However, no one paid her any heed. Subsequently, the police were summoned. She attempted to exit stealthily, but two officers intercepted her at the door. Upon the application of the actual handcuffs to her wrists, I heard one of the neighbors exclaim, "Well done." Karen, the self-designated dictator of the area, was hauled away akin to a felon. Following Karen's disappearance, the HOA had a significant restructuring. The regulations were relaxed, unjust penalties were revoked, and the new board guaranteed that no individual would again possess unilateral authority over the people. What was the most amusing aspect? Several weeks later, I discovered that Karen had attempted to appeal in court, but without success. She was compelled to sell the house and relocate from the community. It is suggested that she has relocated to an unfamiliar area, likely intending to re-establish her dominion in a different locale. However, tranquility has ultimately been restored. Frankly, it has never been so nice to observe a property for sale on that street. Did you find this video enjoyable? Therefore, remember to subscribe to the channel.